Determine delta y and dy for the function y equals cosine of x, where x equals pi over 3 and delta x equals pi over 6. Delta y is y of x plus delta x minus y of x. For this problem, we have x is a pi over 3 and delta x is a pi over 6. So y of pi over 3 plus pi over 6 minus y of pi over 3. We will need to add the pi over 3 plus the pi over 6, and this can be accomplished by getting a common denominator. We'll need to multiply the pi over 3 by a 2 over 2 to become 2 pi over 6, so that we can add it with the pi over 6 minus y of pi over 3. So delta y will equal y of 2 pi over 6 plus 1 pi over 6 is 3 pi over 6 minus y of pi over 3. And we can reduce the 3 pi over 6 by 3 to become pi over 2. So y of pi over 2 minus y of pi over 3. We're going to evaluate each of these using the function y equals cosine of x. So delta y will equal to cosine of pi over 2 minus cosine of pi over 3. Cosine of pi over 2 is a 0, minus the cosine of pi over 3 is a 1/2, and 0 minus 1/2 is a negative 1/2. To determine dy, we need to find the derivative of the function y equals cosine of x. And when we take the derivative, we'll want to use the dy dx notation. The derivative of cosine is negative sine of x. We now want to solve for dy by multiplying dx to the right side, and we will have negative sine of x times dx. We can then replace dx with delta x so that we can give a value for it. And so we have negative sine x times delta x. We can now plug values in to find dy. We'll have the negative sine of x, which is a pi over 3, and then times a delta x, which is a pi over 6. That delta x is not inside of the sign. It'll be in front of the sign, or just multiplying the result of the sign. So we have the negative sine of pi over 3 is a root 3 over 2, and then times pi over 6. So multiplying the numerators, we have a negative root 3 times pi over multiplying the denominators. 2 times 6 is a 12. So negative root 3 pi over 12.